Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be showing you how you can use Git using the learn-git-branching.js.org site. So this is a site that allows you to learn Git in a visualized and interactive way. So as you are seeing on my screen now, I have my terminal console which is on my left hand side, and we also have the blue workspace where all what is going behind the hood is going to be shown. So first of all, we need to know what Git is. So you can take Git like a time machine which allows you to go back in the past to rectify an event which is not going to affect all other events. So for example, now you made a mistake in a particular project you are working on. So without Git now, you can't be able to go back to what you have already done in the past to rectify the previous error you have already done. So let's say, for example, you made there is some issues you are having as you are working on the project currently. Then you need to change something in the past. So by the time you have been making commits of every changes you have been making in the project, then you can be able to go back to that commit where you think if you rectify it, then you can now be able to rectify all what is happening in the project. So just take Git like a time machine. So when an event happens currently now, so once that go back in the past, once it's going to go and alter that event, then you now know that okay, any other event that is going to be coming up subsequently is going to be changed. So you can see now we're having two commits currently. We have commit 0 and we have commit 1. So you can use the git commit to add a commit. You can use git commit to add a commit. You can also git commit also to add another commit. So each subsequent commit is followed by a higher number. So this is, you can just call this as a commit ID. Then you can now see also we're having something called main. So this main is a branch. So this is the branch that we are working on currently. This is that is the project. All our project is going to fall on this particular main branch. And this asterisk means that we are working on this particular main branch. So you can have more than one branch in a project. So anything that happens in these branches is not going to be affected. Any commit you make in any of these branches are independent of each other. So if you have two branches and you make commit in a particular branch, it is not going to affect another branch, except if you now bring all the commits together. So what are we going to do now? If we want to create a new branch, you are going to use the code git branch. So this is going to create a new branch for you. Git branch. Now let's say, for example, I want to create a new user interface for a website. So keeping the old interface intact, and I want to create a new interface so that I'll be able to test between these two user interfaces and see which one do clients actually like most. So I'm just going to create a new branch called the new UI, where I'm going to be making all changes that is going to affect the user interface. So when I say git branch new UI, so I've already created another branch, as you can see it. But this branch currently now has no commits. So this branch has no commits currently now, new UI. And any commit also I make is not going to be on this particular branch, it's going to be on main. Like now if I say git commit now, you can see that this git commit now is made on the main branch and not on the new user interface branch. So now how do I now switch back to this new UI? So how do I switch back to this new UI so that any commit I make on new UI, I can be able to make commits on this new UI or make changes on new UI without affecting the main branch? So I'm going to say git checkout. So with git checkout now, I can be able to switch to this particular new UI. So you can see I've already switched to new UI, and when I make a commit now, it's going to be made on the new user interface. So you can see now it has already, the project now has been split into two because we have two branches. So all these previous commits now are all in both of these branches. But at a point now, when we broke that project into two branches, main branch and new UI branch, we now have a commit that we made in main branch, which is not actually in new UI, and we have a commit that we made in new UI, but is not actually in the main branch. So now what do I do now if I now want these changes that I made in C5? I've already made the new user interface, and all the customers that are using the website actually like it. So I now want to bring this particular commit now back to main. So what do I now do? So this is why I'm now going to say git checkout. So because I need to be on my main branch, when I say git checkout main, I've already switched to the main. Then I now use the git rebase. So I'm going to use git rebase to bring the commits that I made in new UI to that of the main. So I'm going to now say git rebase new UI. So the git rebase is going to be main. Since main, the commit of main came before that of new UI. So I'm going to say git rebase main, then new UI. So you can now see now that the commit I made in UI has now come to that of main. So we can now see all these commits now are all together on the same branch. So I can now go check out now. You can see this prime means that we already have a copy of this commit on new UI branch. So this is the copy that is on the main branch. Why that of the new UI is the one that I'm pointing out in this place. That's why I see we're having C5 prime. So now I can now say git commit and make another commit on the main branch after the branch which was already made on new UI that was brought back to the main branch. So when I say git commit, you can now see I have commit C6, which is on the main branch. So I can now switch back to my main branch using git checkout main. So now another thing also that I also want you to know is that the current commit that we're currently at is known as head. So the current commit now, if I say git checkout C4, so this current commit now is known as head. So now if I now want to go back to C3, I want to go back to C3, commit C3 now. How do I now do that? So I'm going to say git checkout. So when I say git checkout, I can say C3. When I say C3, you can see I've already gone back to C3. I can also say, if I want to go back to C2 now, instead of saying git checkout C2, I can say git checkout head. Since currently now we're at that is our head, that is the current commit we are. That is the current commit we are now. Is C3, which is also the head. I can now say sit head upwards. So which means I'm going to use this sign to go upwards. So you can now see now the head has already shifted towards C2. So what if I want to move to now C0? So instead of giving only one caret sign now, because I want to go to the commit, the first commit that we made. So I'm going to say git checkout. So git checkout the head, then I'm going to give 2 caret sign. This is going to go upward. So you can see now we have already moved twice up. We have moved twice. So when you use, the more the number of caret sign you use, the more the number of steps is going to go backward. So it's going back in time. We are going back to the previous commit that we have made. So it's going to be difficult now to be typing this caret sign multiple times. Let's say I want to go back 50 times or want to go back 10 times. We are now going to be typing this caret sign 10 times. So what do we now do? So let me just go back to git checkout C6. So now I've already shifted my head now to C6. So now if I want to go back now to C1, you can see now if I count it now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is going to be 5 steps backward. So I'm going to say git checkout. Then I'll now use the head, then tilde sign. So I'm going to use the tilde sign and go backward 6 times. You can see 5 times, sorry. So when I use tilde sign, it's going to go back a step backwards 5 times. So you can see now it has already gone back to what? C1. So there are other commands, but I'll be talking about other commands in subsequent videos.